this guy. All right. Cenk Uygur, that's this guy. Anna Kasparian, that's that person over there.
Okay. Anna is a woman.
She is. Yes. Your host, a Turkish barbarian. That's right. We should take calls again.
No. No.
Those voicemails we used to run were hilarious. Do I have him here? Let me see if I have it. No, well, that's a different one. Anyways, okay, twists and turns in today's show. So CNN with an excellent report. How's that for a twist to begin with? Okay. And then not such a good report. So, twists and then turns, okay? Asia Argento. Oh boy. Man, okay, I don't know what kind of trouble I'm gonna get myself in that story. Okay, so buckle up, brace for impact. You might want to tell the right wing to set the recorders on record. Anyway, so are there recorders on the internet? Is there anything not recorded on the internet? All right, and then we got two great stories to start for you guys. The McGahn story has an awesome quote, super relevant, and then Rudy, of course, with the awesome quote of "the truth isn't the truth."
Yeah,
Come on.
We'll give you the details on
All right, so Casper, take it away.
All right. Over the weekend, the New York Times published an explosive report indicating that the White House counsel, Don McGahn, is not only cooperating with special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Donald Trump's potential obstruction of justice, but that Donald Trump's administration, his advisors, and his personal lawyers are completely unaware of the extent to which McGahn has been testifying and the information that he has given to Bob Mueller. The story is insane, and it shows a pretty significant divide among Donald Trump's personal lawyers, or at least previous personal lawyers, and the White House counsel. There's a lot of backstabbing, a lack of trust. I'm gonna give you all the details right now. So in at least 3 voluntary interviews with investigators that totaled 30 hours over the past 9 months, McGahn described the president's fury toward the Russia investigation and the ways in which he urged McGahn to respond to it. He provided the investigators examining whether Trump obstructed justice, a clear view of the president's most intimate moments with his lawyer. Okay, so let me clarify a few things. Some might wonder, well, isn't there attorney-client privilege, or in the case of the president, executive privilege that would help protect the lawyer, the White House counsel, from cooperating with Bob Mueller? Yes. There is a protection called executive privilege. However, Donald Trump's personal lawyers, which included Ty Cobb and John Dowd, encouraged McGahn to cooperate with Mueller because their idea was, if he cooperates, if we cooperate with the special counsel's investigation, this will all go away. Then there will be proof that there was no obstruction of justice and that there was no Russian meddling, or that at least Trump is not guilty of any wrongdoing. Okay, so there was 2 massively wrong assumptions in this series of events. One was the reason Dowd and Cobb, Trump's former personal attorneys in this case, they've now left with their hair on fire. Anyway, decided to let McGahn testify is because they believed Donald Trump that he had nothing to hide. What a preposterous assumption. I mean, are you serious? I know that they barely knew him at the time, but of course Donald Trump has something to hide, of course. So they thought, oh, well, he didn't do it, so there's no harm in McGahn talking to Mueller. If you thought he didn't do it, you would be correct. But you believe Donald Trump? I mean, I guess they assume, no, the client opens up to their attorney, tells them the whole truth so they could help in fighting his case, right? No, Trump's not even gonna tell you guys. Of course he's not gonna tell you, right? So that was wrong assumption number 1. Wrong assumption number 2 might be even more important. So understand what Anna was saying is that McGahn is not Trump's lawyer. He is the White House's lawyer. It's a different role. So now, still, an executive privilege is debatable as to what it applies to and what it doesn't. Attorney-client privilege, in this case, probably would have applied, could have been debatable, but it doesn't matter because they waived both of them, right? Not only did they waive them, but in their infinite incompetence,
They also didn't ask McGahn after he testified, because he testified actually to Mueller, talked to Mueller all the way back in November, long time ago, right? And he talked to him for 30 hours. That's a ton of time that he spent with Mueller, giving him all the details of what Trump did. Trump's lawyers didn't bother asking McGahn, hey, what did you tell the special counsel?
Right, they were not.
Unbelievable incompetence.
They were not at all briefed, because they did not ask on the interactions that he had with Mueller. What did you tell Mueller? What did you not tell Mueller? Like, it's insane. And it wasn't until the New York Times published this piece that there was panic at the White House, where there was a lot of stress about, okay, there's a lot that we don't know, and they didn't really understand to the extent at which McGahn had cooperated with Mueller. So McGahn also laid out how Trump tried to ensure control of the investigation, giving investigators a mix of information both potentially damaging and favorable to the president. But again, the president doesn't know. The president's lawyers don't know. And what's interesting about this is that McGahn is the White House counsel. McGahn has his own lawyer. Right, so there are all these lawyers involved. There's all this disagreement in regard to the strategy that Trump should utilize in fighting back against the special counsel's investigation. It's a complete and utter disaster. So let me give you one little piece before you jump in, Cenk. So McGahn and his lawyer, remember he has a lawyer, William Burke, could not understand why Trump was so willing to allow McGahn to speak freely to the special counsel, and feared Trump was setting up McGahn to take the blame for any possible illegal acts of obstruction. This is a very important part of the puzzle, because McGahn's like, why would you want me to do this? And so he gets together with his own lawyer, and then they start to realize, wait, there's a possibility that Trump is gonna make McGahn take the fall for any wrongdoing. Trump has questioned McGahn's loyalty. In turn, Trump's behavior has so exacerbated McGahn that he has called the president King Kong behind his back to connote his volcanic anger. So they don't like each other. They're not getting along. There's a question of loyalty. And at the same time, McGahn is being encouraged to answer Robert Mueller's questions.
Which leads us in a second to massively wrong assumption number 2. But I want to make clear that Anna is not using the word insane lightly. She said it twice so far. That's literally the word McGahn's lawyer used to describe the strategy of allowing McGahn to testify to Mueller. They thought it was, quote, insane. And so the fish rots from the head down. Trump is monumentally stupid. I've told you that 100 times because it's true. And the rest of the media and even his own lawyers and even political actors in Washington don't understand the depth of it, and it's relevant. So it's relevant in this case to assumption number 2. So they get this note from Trump and his lawyers saying, yeah, you can testify. They're like, you guys know what we know? We're the White House counsel. That's insane. They're like, oh, it must be his strategy to throw McGahn under the bus and say that he just took McGahn's advice to obstruct justice, because that's what Nixon did to his White House counsel, John Dean. John Dean wound up going to jail. So McGahn's like, I'm not going to jail. And so he says, and it's now in this New York Times report, that he answered Mueller's questions honestly and I think it was fulsomely, yeah. Which is a fun word, okay? Meaning like, no, I gave him everything I got, brother, because I ain't going to jail, right?
Yep.
So then they realized later, oh no, it turns out Trump didn't have that strategy. So I'm going to quote the New York Times here. As the months passed on, it became apparent that Mr. McGahn and Mr. Burke, that's his lawyer, had overestimated the amount of thought that they believed the president put into his legal strategy. What did I tell you? He's an idiot. He didn't have a legal strategy. He's never had any strategy. There is no 3-dimensional chess. There's no 2-dimensional chess. He'd be lucky to make it through a game of checkers. So he let McGahn testify because he's an idiot and he is insane. He's like, oh, I got this, sure, yeah, okay, yeah, let him testify. He gave 1 million documents, and by the way, you can give him credit for transparency that he gave 1 million documents and let McGahn testify. And if he was really innocent and Mueller comes out afterwards and goes, oh, no, they were open and transparent, at least on those counts, and it turns out they didn't do it, then I take it back, and it turns out, hey, he was transparent for a good reason. But my guess is, and now McGahn and his lawyer's guess is, oh no, this moron, he wasn't gonna throw us under the bus. He just had no idea what he was doing. McGahn, now having spent more time with Trump, probably realizes, of course, what was I thinking? This is one of the dumbest guys in the country. He had no strategy at all.
Right, look, even if McGahn was incorrect in his assumptions about Trump and what his real agenda was, I think that McGahn still did the right thing in cooperating with Mueller, because Trump is a wild card. And we don't know whether or not Trump is, I mean, I would speculate that Trump has obstructed justice. I mean, there's so many examples. Firing James Comey is one example. Constantly badgering Jeff Sessions for recusing himself is another example. I mean, these are all things that he's doing very publicly. But nonetheless, even if you're on the fence and you want to give Trump the benefit of the doubt and believe that he's not attempting to obstruct justice, I still think it's important for McGahn as the White House counsel to protect himself, because if Trump goes down, everyone around him is going to go down with him. Anyone who continues to protect him. And by the way, if you can recall, last year there was this huge story regarding Trump's personal lawyers, Ty Cobb and John Dowd. They were at a steakhouse in Washington where reporters like roam freely. Like, there's reporters everywhere, right? They're eating steak, they're listening in on conversations, and they were openly saying disparaging things about White House counsel Don McGahn, because they really believed in this strategy of transparency and cooperation with special counsel Mueller. And McGahn was like, this is a bad idea, what are you guys doing? So I bring that up because it shows you how incredibly incompetent some of the people involved in this story are. I mean, these are Trump's personal lawyers. You're right, they just take Trump's word for it. And who knows what Trump is really guilty of, right? But it's just fascinating how his own personal lawyers gave him that benefit of the doubt and constructed a strategy around that.
Yeah, and that was a terrible mistake. So, by the way, in the story, it's revealed that Trump did not understand that McGahn is not his personal lawyer. He lacks understanding of very simple concepts. He is the White House counsel. He represents the office, not the person sitting in the office. Well, but that's me. I'm the person sitting in the office. He's my lawyer, isn't he? Oh God, you're so stupid. Okay, so that created an issue. Now McGahn, they say, and he claims, well, I didn't testify that he broke any laws, but he has a very expansive definition of executive privilege and what Trump is allowed to do in the White House. So did he give them information that might indicate that there was obstruction of justice? Well, first of all, a huge part of this is that he's the one that told them that Trump ordered the firing of Mueller. It's just that the others in the office would not do it, including McGahn.
Right.
So the prosecutors did not know that until McGahn talked to them. That's enormous when it comes to building an obstruction of justice case. And McGahn also has details on why he fired the people that he did, why he wants Sessions to quit, right? And if it turns out it is because he wants to make sure to block the investigation of himself, that's obstruction of justice. So then when you turn to the prosecutors, according to investigators that the New York Times spoke to, McGahn was, quote, a fruitful witness. Trump's in a lot of trouble, and he's too stupid to even realize it.
No,
he's
he
in a panic. No. He's in a panic overall, no question. And when they got Cohen and all the information that comes with Cohen, it went to a 5-alarm fire, right? But he was too stupid to realize, hey, that White House counsel can actually testify against you. Don't let him go speak to Mueller. And he didn't know until this New York Times story came out about how much McGahn had talked to Mueller and revealed. And so that's why now, you're right, Anna, that they go to Bedminster, they do a panicked get together, Trump's again in a fury. He's just too small-minded to understand the consequences of his decisions and his actions. Once they finally land on top of his orange head, then he's like, oh my God, I didn't know, I'm so angry. And hence, McGahn's nickname for him, King Kong.
Yeah, I remember back in the day when we would cover some more local news, we would do stories about really dumb criminals, like people who would go to banks, rob the bank, and then forget a jacket at the bank with their ID in the pocket. And it makes me happy to know that criminals on all levels are stupid.
No, that's why I've been saying from day one, he's gonna get caught and he's not gonna make it to 2020 because he's just flat out too stupid to execute anywhere near an efficient cover-up, right? And it doesn't take much. When you're the president, you have so much power, and you have executive privilege, you have all these things that you could use. You, if the FBI was investigating you, you would be toast, right? But the president could actually use the law to shield himself, even if he did it. But my thesis was he's too stupid to do that. And I believe, and this is yet another example of it, that I was right. He's just too stupid to even do the simplest things to cover up his crimes. So here we go again. Tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
The only thing that I will say I'm a little concerned about is, it seems like Mueller's really boring in on obstruction of justice, etc. And I'm worried. I haven't seen
the money laundering stuff.
Yeah, I haven't seen stuff about money laundering in a long, long time. And it looks like they might have brought the money laundering lawyers to deal with Manafort, not Trump. So I'm starting to worry that Mueller is like too careful and did not go to why Trump is working with the Russians in the first place.
Right, but you're forgetting about, the investigation into Michael Cohen. Right, because if anything, Michael Cohen would, and those documents that they managed to get in that raid of his place, I think those documents might have something in there that would put Trump in a bad situation regarding money. He's done money laundering. Like he couldn't get a loan here in the United States. He couldn't do it. He went bankrupt too many times. He got his loans from Russia. That was a big story during the election. So what did Russia just decide to give him these massive loans to be nice? I don't know. There's something shady going on. And
yeah, so I hope they get to it with Cohen, but I'm not sure. Knowing why I say Mueller's too careful is knowing how careful he is. If he's run out of time to investigate the money laundering. So
what does that even mean, though? Like, he's investigating him. Like, this whole thing about, oh, you got to wrap up the investigation. Is there a time limit?
Well, look, there is a couple of, yes, in the real world there is. Politically there is, right? And they're bringing a ton of pressure. And every day the mainstream media goes along with it. Look, so they're tough on Trump in other ways. But on that talking point, they should be like, he's done what he's done. Okay, yeah, go ahead, keep crying about how it's taking too long. That's irrelevant, right? But no, the mainstream media goes, well, has he taken too long? People are now concerned he's taking too long, right? And they call it 50-50, and now pressure mounts.
I see that more from partisan media, but mainstream media, if you're talking about cable news, CNN, MSNBC, no. They're very much in favor of this investigation. They support it. They won't stop talking about it. I don't see pressure mounting from them to wrap things up.
Yeah, we're getting into a little bit of conjecture here, but look, and if things go on too long, he will fire him and say, hey, look, man, this witch hunt took so long, and I had to let him go. Like, and part of the reason I say it, last thing on this, is that when Emma and Eric Beiler went and interviewed Trump supporters, having watched all that, and you can watch it at Rebel headquarters, my takeaway from that was the most common thing they said was, it's taking forever. No, he's got to end it. He's got to end it. So it gives Trump a justification for firing everyone investigating him. So that's a reality, and Mueller's got to deal with that. So I'm definitely worried that he didn't go into the money laundering and why he worked with the Russians at all. So that would be really disappointing, and then we'd have a murkier situation, which is what I'm worried about. All right, anyway, let's keep going.
All right. Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump's lawyer, was on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd, and he was explaining why Donald Trump so far has refused to answer questions by special counsel Robert Mueller. And during this exchange, Giuliani said something that later turned into a meme. Take a look.
Look, I'm not going to be rushed into having him testify so that he gets trapped into perjury. And when you tell me that, he should testify because he's going to tell the truth and he shouldn't worry, well, that's so silly because it's somebody's version of the truth, not the truth. He didn't have a conversation.
Truth is truth. I don't mean to go like.
No, it isn't truth. Truth isn't truth. The president of the United States says, I didn't.
Truth isn't truth. Mr. Mayor, do you realize what
No.
This is going to become a bad meme.
Don't do this to me.
Don't do truth isn't truth to me.
So, okay, the truth isn't the truth. That's the statement that everyone's talking about. But I want to read you what Giuliani said, because I don't know, maybe I'm reading it incorrectly, but okay, let me just read it. When you tell me that he should testify because he's going to tell the truth and he shouldn't worry, well, that's so silly because that's somebody's version of the truth. So are you saying that Trump is gonna lie when he testifies, and that's why you're concerned that he's gonna be caught in a perjury trap?
Yeah. So let's break it down. You're absolutely right in your reading of it. And presumably Giuliani meant to say that someone else could lie about him and they could accept his word instead of Trump's word and then call what Trump is saying a lie and hence the perjury trap. But he didn't say that. He said he was referring to what Trump was saying, that he might not give an accurate account. So it might be his 28th misstatement in a row, but his literal words are indicating that Trump wouldn't tell the truth.
I mean, you are a lawyer in the most high-profile case in the country. There's no room for, oh, I misspoke, or that was just a small error. I actually meant to say this. Or how many times is he going to do this?
No, and the fish rots from the head down. And so if I was being investigated by the FBI, would I hire Rudy Giuliani?
Hell no.
No way. The guy's a total buffoon. So I wouldn't hire him because I'd hire a competent attorney, a regular attorney, and one who has a specialty in this case and is careful like most attorneys. But Trump hires someone as reckless and stupid as he is. And Trump looks at Giuliani and thinks, nailed it, right?
Yeah.
Even if what he meant is that Trump isn't gonna lie and someone else is gonna lie, don't say the phrase, the truth isn't the truth. How unsavvy are you that you don't realize that people will immediately take that as, oh, these guys have no connection to the truth. They don't care about the truth. What a terrible thing to say as an attorney,
right?
And as someone representing the president, even if you meant it the right way, which it's not clear that you did mean it the right way.
So I want to give you guys a little more context into this conversation so you can, he clarifies what he means a little bit in this next clip. So let's take a look at that.
Donald Trump says, I didn't talk about Flynn with Comey. Comey says, you did talk about it. So tell me what the truth is.
Don McGahn might know.
If you're such a genius, Don McGahn doesn't know. If that's the situation, they have two pieces of evidence. Trump says, I didn't tell him, and the other guy says that he did say it. Which is the truth? We have a credibility gap between the two of them. You got to select one or the other. Now, who do you think Mueller's going to select? One of his best friends, Comey, or the president, who he has been carrying on a completely wild, crazy,
is it possible?
Unorthodox investigation?
Wild, crazy, unorthodox investigation. Okay, so look, the truth isn't the truth did turn into a meme. And so Rudy Giuliani felt the need to clarify what he meant on social media. I want to read you those tweets very quickly. He says, my statement was not meant as a pontification on moral theology, but one referring to the situation where two people make precisely contradictory statements, the classic he said, she said puzzle. Sometimes further inquiry can reveal the truth, other times it doesn't. So just to answer his question, you know, you have Comey saying one thing and Trump saying the other. Who do you believe? I would believe Comey because he doesn't have a history of constant deception as Trump does.
So no. So I understand what Giuliani's saying. I think most people understand it, even though he misstated it and stated as if Trump would be lying. And he said this phrase that is, of course, going to get him in trouble, and he's incredibly stupid for saying. But overall, we all get it. He's saying that, hey, Trump's going to tell the truth, but the other guys are going to lie about him, and then the prosecutor will just believe Comey and the other guys, and then call what Trump is saying perjury, even though it isn't. That's the claim that Giuliani's trying to make. But that's not how it works. And you wouldn't actually just decide, hey, is one guy telling the truth or the other? Who do I like more? Who do I believe more? No, you would look for other evidence. That's why Chuck Todd pointed out, well, McGahn would know. If McGahn was in the room and he's the White House counsel, and we found out over the weekend, he very honestly talked to Robert Mueller because the idiot Donald Trump let him and waived attorney-client privilege and executive privilege. Then if McGahn's in the room and he backs up Comey's version of events, as an example, in that case, he might not have been in the room, but McGahn was in the room for a lot of these things. So if Trump says X and it turns out the other guys say why, the other people in the room also say why, well, then you have your answer. So the rest of the evidence will determine who's telling the truth. That's why Trump should not testify. If I was his lawyer, I would say, are you kidding me? We're gonna go nowhere near Mueller. We're never gonna be in the same state as Mueller because Trump isn't telling the truth, right? And he will get caught. He will definitely get caught because most of those cases, there were other people in the room and they don't wanna go to jail. So they will tell the truth of what happened, including potentially the White House counsel. The second reason why Trump might get caught is because he constantly contradicts himself. So you don't even need other witnesses. Trump will say, I fired Comey because of the Russia investigation on national television. Then he'll turn around and say, no, I didn't fire him because of that. I fired him because he was mean to Hillary Clinton. That's literally what that's their going thesis now, that they fired Comey because they didn't like the way he treated Hillary Clinton. That was the original memo that Rosenstein wrote, and now they've come back to that. But you contradicted yourself, so you're by definition lying in one of those cases.
And not only that, I mean, think about the way he tries to slander Robert Mueller or James Comey. I mean, Robert Mueller has been a lifetime or lifelong Republican, but he keeps painting him as this Democrat who's on a witch hunt. I mean, he's lying about who Robert Mueller is. Look, Robert Mueller is not. It's funny because in this weird topsy-turvy world, you find yourself as a progressive defending Robert Mueller when in any other situation, any other scenario, Robert Mueller is not someone that we would typically defend. But he keeps going after him as if he's like this hardcore progressive who's trying to get Trump impeached, but that is not the case. So the fact that he's lying about that shows you what his character is. He lies time and time again. Look, I don't think Robert Mueller even needs to talk to Trump. Right? Trump incriminates himself on a regular basis on social media. He can't help himself. So collect that evidence, do your job, talk to the people that matter, and let's get to a conclusion.
Yes, and finally, I think that what we're gonna be left with in remembrance of this administration once Trump is taken out of office for the nonstop pathological lies. I mean, perjury would be the bare minimum of his problems. We will remember things as truth isn't truth. Kellyanne Conway saying we believe in alternative facts, and Donald Trump saying what you're seeing and what you're reading is not what's happening. That is another direct quote. And by the way, let's all remember that he told Leslie Stahl, I keep attacking the press because when you guys write negative things about me, I don't want people to believe you. So Anna's right. He has incriminated himself 1,000 times publicly. It'd be great if we went to go talk to Mueller on the record because he would. It's plainly obvious who Donald Trump is. We all see it. By the way, even the MAGA guys know it. You think they don't know that he's lying nonstop? They know, they just don't care, right? You know that he went to, if he goes to talk to Mueller, he'll lie about approximately 200 times, in a half an hour. So. But even if he doesn't, he's still toast for all the lies he said in public, let alone the obstruction of justice, let alone the underlying crime.
I hope so. I'm not as optimistic. I think even if he's found guilty, somehow miraculously he'll be able to skate through this.
No.
Like Oksana Bayul style. Do a triple-double.
Wow. Yeah. Random old school skating reference.
I know skating.
Didn't he collude with Oksana Bayul? Just kidding, okay? Anyway, hopefully we'll find out soon enough. And the law of physics still do apply. I don't believe that Donald Trump has any magic. I think that eventually life will catch up with him. And that eventually is pretty soon. So, all right, we gotta take a quick break. When we come back, we will give you the excellent report from CNN. That's a nice twist. And on a very important story. And then the fairly terrible report from CNN on a completely different story. So we'll be fair about both of those. All right, we'll come right back. All right, back on the Young Turks. There's so many comments here. Gabby Marita 86 on Twitter says, I like how people are acting like Trump could be playing some grand 3D chess strategy. In reality, he's acting more like a drunk toddler who doesn't get why the square doesn't fit into the triangle slot of his object permanence puzzle.
That's so funny. By the way, just real quick thing that I wanted to get to, but we didn't have time. So in regard to that New York Times article about White House counsel McGahn testifying for Mueller, like yada yada, Trump went on a Twitter storm about that, of course. But my favorite tweet was where he claimed that the New York Times has apologized for that piece. No, they didn't. Well, New York Times responded by saying, we stand by our reporting. No one's apologizing. Get out of here.
Which maniac doesn't realize he's pathological liar?
He's crazy.
I mean, look, they think that the press is hard on him. They're not hard enough. No, they should call him what he is, a narcissist, pathological liar. That's not an opinion. Like at this point, it's super obvious. Anyway, Minute Zach says Bill Maher consistently calls the Trump administration actions a slow-moving coup, but these days this also remembers slow-moving The Departed climax, where they all turn on each other in the most incompetent way possible. Thank God I didn't read that tweet earlier because I was rewatching The Departed and I was talking about it on Old School and I think the post game, and I finally got to the ending and I hadn't remembered any of it. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. My memory sucks enough that I could just rewatch old movies and it's like new to me. Anyway, get all those fun Old School and post games by becoming a member, tyt.com/join to become a member. I got more on that in a second. But one more tweet for you guys. Rito Riku writes in, Trump would look awfully good in an orange jumpsuit, or would it clash? That's more thought than has gone into his legal defense. Maybe he just doesn't have one because he's guilty of everything and more.
I don't think Trump believes that there's any such thing as too much orange, right?
Indeed. Player 2 writes in on YouTube Super Chat, referring to Old School. He says, Old School, I've also thrown out my old underwear and socks a few weeks before you talked about it. In fact, over the weekend, we did one more sock and shoes funeral with the kids. Okay, now they're having a total blast. Like they're looking to throw away their stuff so we can have a funeral. Anyway, I know you're confused by it if you didn't watch it, but become a member. You'll love all the shows, including Old School, where we talked about that. tyt.com/join. All right, Stabby666 says on YouTube Super Chat, are TYT ever going to address Jimmy Dore still defending Russia and blaming Clinton and Obama for everything after 2 years? Look, we have difference of opinion. It's okay.
Massive differences in opinion.
That's okay.
Let me just be clear about that.
That's okay. Look, Jimmy and Steve yelled at each other in aggressive progressive, and they're both aggressive progressives, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's okay. We got a whole range here. Check out all the shows, see what you like, and go for it.
I just hope that you guys understand that TYT is not one person, and that we have varying views, different views, and
look, I'm not going to bother talking to people who can't understand simple concepts like that. Okay, so what do you want me to like? People are obsessed with that. Like, hey, it's like somehow criminal for me and Jimmy to disagree, or if Jimmy's part of the network, that must mean that I support everything he says 100%, and he supports everything I say 100%. Or maybe we just disagree on some issues and agree on a lot of other issues. Voila, problem solved. It wasn't that complicated. Okay, anyway, let's go forward.
All right. In a rare piece of excellent reporting, CNN looked into the weapons used by the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen, which have killed countless civilians, and this is all part of a civil war, an ongoing civil war that began in 2015 in Yemen. It was a rebellion by Houthi rebels, and the Saudi-backed coalition, which supports the Yemeni government, has been aggressively going after these rebels, and unfortunately, many civilians have died as a result of that. Now, the story that we recently talked about had to do with the bombing of a school bus, which carried dozens of children. The bomb used by the Saudi-led coalition in that devastating attack on a school bus in Yemen was sold as part of a US State Department sanctioned arms deal with Saudi Arabia. Now, I mention that because in the update to this story, CNN did a great job in finding which weapons were used, where the weapons came from, and of course, they come from the US government. These are weapons that we've sold to Saudi Arabia. Now, the weapon that left dozens of children dead on August 9th was a 500-pound laser-guided MK-82 bomb made by Lockheed Martin, one of the top US defense contractors. And just to be clear regarding the casualties of that bombing, of the 51 people who died in the airstrike, 40 of them were children. Now, I want to just quickly show you a video of what that bombing was like and how devastating it was for the people who were victimized by it, who were in the area. The video I'm about to show you is graphic, so I want to give you warning. But with that said, let's take a look.
On August 9th, Zaid's son Osama filmed his class on their long-awaited school trip, a reward for graduating summer school. Within hours, and it had all gone horribly wrong. A plane from the US-backed Saudi-led coalition struck a bus carrying them. Dozens died. Some of the bodies were so mutilated, identification became impossible.
Okay, so first of all, I want to give credit to CNN for an excellent report. We oftentimes criticize them for just taking what the Pentagon says at face value, et cetera, but credit where credit is due. Terrific reporting here. And we'll have the link to the full CNN segment in the description box below if you're watching this later on YouTube or Facebook. The numbers that Anna gave you in the CNN is quoting is the bare minimum. Others are stating higher numbers, but at a very minimum, 40 kids were killed. And unfortunately, a lot of the kids that you saw in that school bus video are dead. And they happened to take that video before the bomb hit, obviously. And then you saw some of the kids that were injured. And that last kid in the hospital, they were all incredibly hard to look at. So why are we subjecting you guys to that in CNN, et cetera? Because you have to know the consequences of our actions. So when we sell weapons to Saudi Arabia and they use it to bomb school children, well, that's partly on us. Even if you don't think so, they certainly think so. And so when Joe Scarborough, the next time he tells you they hate us because they hate us, remember that video. No, they hate us because of that bomb was made in the USA that killed their kids.
Right, and I also want to mention that it's not just that we sell these weapons to Saudi Arabia, but we also supply Saudi Arabia with fuel necessary to carry out some of these attacks. And more importantly, we're helping them with intelligence. So we're very much helping Saudi Arabia fight this war. And it does have consequences. I mean, one of the consequences is civilians die. And that leads to hostility toward the United States. I mean, the hostility to the United States is bad, but let's just keep in mind the worst part about all of this is that children, innocent people, innocent civilians who are caught up in this civil war are losing their lives, and we're playing a role in that. Now, I want to give you some more information about these weapons and what Trump did versus what Obama did in Yemen. So the bomb that was used in this particular attack is very similar to the one in an attack on a funeral hall in Yemen in October of 2016, in which 155 people were killed and hundreds more were wounded. So in March of that year, a strike on a Yemeni market, this time reportedly by a US supplied precision guided MK-84 bomb, killed 97 people. So this is happening in 2016, and the Obama administration realizes, okay, this is not good. There are human rights issues here. In the aftermath, Obama banned the sale of precision-guided military technology to Saudi Arabia over human rights concerns. But guess what happens when Trump comes into office? He decides to essentially get rid of that ban. The ban was overturned by the Trump administration's then Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson.
So I want to give you James Mattis's quote. He's the Secretary of Defense on whether we're helping them target. He said, I will tell you that we do help them plan what we call kind of targeting. He said, we do not do dynamic targeting for them. So the distinction he's trying to draw is, we didn't tell them to bomb that bus filled with school kids, but we helped them with intelligence overall so they know the general areas to bomb, where the rebels are moving, et cetera, right? So you do with that whatever you please. So number one, you should always question the Pentagon and the government, and so I don't even know if that's true. But even if you believe that it is true, I don't know that that makes it that much better.
Right.
And we're giving them a lot of technical capabilities, like the refueling of their jets, that they couldn't do without us, and the bombs they wouldn't have without us. So could they have done that bombing without our help? The answer is very literally no. So it's possible that they could have gone to China and Russia. Maybe they might not have the capabilities that we have in executing these type of missions, such as they are. So I want to go back to the CNN report here because they show you the bomb and how we know definitively that it was a US-made bomb. So let's watch that part.
This video of shrapnel was filmed in the aftermath of the attack and sent to CNN by contact in Sada. A cameraman working for CNN subsequently filmed these images. Munitions experts tell CNN this was a US-made Mark Mk-82 bomb, weighing in at half a ton. The first 5 digits there are the cage number, the commercial and government entity number. This number here denotes Lockheed Martin, one of the top US defense contractors.
We're at the forefront of the science that makes them real.
This particular Mk-82 is a paveway, a laser-guided precision bomb. Its targeting accuracy a particular point of pride for Lockheed Martin.
So one more time, credit to CNN, not just because they're covering this topic matter, which is really, really important, but they bothered to send a reporter to the ground to confirm that it was an American-made Lockheed Martin bomb. So now they went a little bit further and gave you a map of all the different places where American bombs have landed. It's not a pretty picture. Let's take a look at that as well.
The devastation inflicted by the Mk-82 is all too familiar in Yemen. In March 2016, a strike on a market using the similarly laser-guided 2,000-pound Mk-84 killed 97 people. In October 2016, another strike on a funeral hall killed 155 people and wounded hundreds more. Then the bus attack on August 9th, where they're still counting the dead.
As Anna pointed out, one of those terrible attacks is what caused the Obama administration to pause our military and technical help to Saudi Arabia in specific areas. Now, Trump comes in and goes, no, just bomb them to pieces. Who cares? I don't care about the human rights concerns. I am lifting that block, which we put into place because we thought you were bombing the wrong people and doing it basically without care. And then he sold them $110 billion of extra weaponry. And no one is innocent here. With our Democratic and Republican administrations have been supporting Saudi Arabia and their human rights abuses for decade after decade after decade. This war in particular that's been going on for 3 years is literally the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. According to the United Nations, they have 22 million people in Yemen. 3/4 of the population is in desperate need of aid and protection as we continue to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia that devastates the country of Yemen. So yes, he made it worse. And hence, Saudi Arabia, understandably, took that as a green light to continue to these bombings. So finally, when asked about this bombing in particular, the Saudi military and their coalition said that this was, quote, a legitimate military action. You saw the kids. And then they were even more specific. They said that it targeted Houthi leaders that were responsible for recruiting and training young children and sending them to the battlefields. In other words, yeah, we meant to hit that bus full of young children because we thought they were going to be trained to be rebels by the Houthis. You saw the video on the bus. Did they look like they were being trained? They were on their way back from a picnic. They were so excited because this was their rare treat for going through summer school. They weren't getting trained as rebels. They just obliterated that bus full of kids. And part of the reason is we gave them the green light and then we gave them the bombs and then we showed them how to use it. They don't hate us because they hate us. They hate us because of our actions.
Yep. All right, let's go from one great CNN report to one terrible CNN report. Recently, CNN's Jake Tapper decided to fact check Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and their proposal for a Medicare-for-all system. Now, as we had previously reported, there was a libertarian institute funded by the Koch brothers that came out with a report indicating that Medicare for all, even though they tried to frame it as if it would cost us a lot of money, it would actually save us $2 trillion over the next decade. Now, Bernie Sanders loved that report, loved that study. He used it to highlight the fact that a Medicare for all system would save US taxpayers, meaning Americans, $2 trillion over the next 10 years, which, by the way, is an underestimate. But Jake Tapper tried to fact check it and screwed up terribly. Let's take a look.
This week, we're going to take a look at a claim made by two self-identified Democratic socialists, Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders and New York congressional candidate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They say that a study funded by the billionaire Koch brothers, who are generally, I think it's fair to say, libertarians and conservatives, that the Medicare for all proposal would actually save the government money.
Let me thank the Koch brothers, of all people, for sponsoring a study that shows that Medicare for all would save the American people $2 trillion over a 10-year period.
It shows that Medicare for all is actually much cheaper than the current system that we pay right now.
Is that true? Did a study funded by the Koch brothers indicate that Medicare for all would actually save the US government trillions of dollars? No, it's not true, at least not according to the author of the study.
Okay, no. There's a lot. But the first thing that I want to get to is a very obvious mistake here. And I don't know if it was an intentional misleading statement, but Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on multiple occasions mentioned that a Medicare for all system would save Americans $2 trillion. But Jake Tapper said that Bernie Sanders claims that it's going to save the US government $2 trillion. So which one is it? What has Bernie said incessantly? Who's right, who's wrong? I don't know. Let's take a look.
Sponsoring a study that shows that Medicare for all would save the American people, $2 trillion.
Yeah. He didn't say the government, he said the American people.
Yeah.
But that's actually the smallest part of this story.
Yeah.
So I saw that Jake Tapper story, so-called fact check, and I fact checked his fact check and it was all over him on Twitter. But and then a lot of you guys were, and then a lot of other people were, and then now they're beginning to backpedal. So let me give you just a little bit of context. Look, we did a story just earlier in this show giving CNN a ton of credit for their report on Yemen. In the past, when people ask me who's some of the best anchors on mainstream media, I often say Jake Tapper. And I've credited Chris Cuomo and Alison Camerota, et cetera. So we're not like the right wing where we're just, blanket, they're all terrible, et cetera, right? But this one was terrible. And I can guess as to why they're doing it wrong, but I'll tell you the two parts they got the most wrong in a second. My guess is that, hey, we say Trump's wrong all the time, which he is, so we have to balance it out. So let's just find something, anything we could pin on Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and the left wing, and then we go, hey, you see that, we're even. Let's call them liars. They can't wait. They can't wait to call them lies, okay? So now, if you ask Jake, he'll be like, no way, you're crazy, no way, right? But every time Bernie Sanders during the 2016 election and on, right, talks about anything, is it practical? Is it true? It's that dismissive attitude. What Jake Tapper and a lot of those hosts don't realize is they do have a bias. They don't realize it, it's not a conspiracy. They didn't get together in a room and decide it. They have groupthink in Washington. And the groupthink is the establishment and the status quo are correct. Whatever is in that, what they perceive to be the center is correct. That is why they will often attack the right and the left. Constantly attack right, attack left, attack right, left. Hey, guess what? Your bias is what you call the center and what the rest of us call the establishment.
So look, in this specific case though, there was no attempt at hitting the center of the issue. Because if you are trying to be objective and then do what CNN usually does, which is fail at that and actually end up being neutral, you would at least have the decency to reach out to Bernie Sanders or reach out to an expert other than a super biased individual who's funded by the Koch brothers to get their side and try to figure out whether or not the claims made by the author of the Koch brothers funded study, if those accusations are true, right? They didn't do that. They didn't reach out to anyone. They just took the study. They took the word of Chuck Blauhaus, who authored that study, at his word, and they didn't ask anyone else. They didn't ask an expert. They didn't reach out to Bernie Sanders. They didn't talk to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. In fact, in the next video, Tapper says the thing that actually frustrated me the most, which was essentially giving the benefit of the doubt to someone who's been funded by the Koch brothers to essentially lie about a Medicare-for-all system. Take a look.
Now, while it's true that the Koch brothers have given millions of dollars to the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, and an AP investigation earlier this year suggested that the Koch brothers do have control and influence over the hiring and firing of professors, we should note, for whatever it's worth, the authors of this study said the Koch brothers did not influence them in any way.
No, you shouldn't note that. You shouldn't note that. You just mentioned that they have a say in the hiring and firing of professors in departments that they're funding. Really? You think that they have absolutely no say over what this author publishes? The Koch brothers have been funding these fake scientists for years to put out climate denial studies, okay? That's what they do. That's their business. It's propaganda to protect their profits.
Now, two points about that. One is, if you go ask the author, hey, are you lying on behalf of the Koch brothers? Do you think he's gonna say, oh yeah, of course, Jake, you caught me, and Bernie caught me, yes.
Yeah.
I got hired to tell people that Medicare-for-all is bad, because that's what the Koch brothers believe. So, but okay, you caught me red-handed. So that's a useless thing to ask them. But secondarily, more important in my opinion, is not whether the Koch brothers wrote a memo in the middle of that study saying, hey, remember, I'm paying your checks, and if you want the checks to clear, you're gonna write what I tell you to write. No, they hired that guy in the first case because they knew what he was gonna write. Did they hire a progressive to be in that position? No. Did they hire a normal scientist, economist, whatever it might be for that position? No. Do they hire one of the 97% of world scientists to study climate change? No, they hired the 3% that deny climate change. And that 3% know they're gonna get paid by the Koch brothers. I'm talking about, of course, a different topic in that case. In this case, it's all in the hiring decisions. So when you go say, no, but I asked the author and he says the Koch brothers didn't interfere, it's kind of a preposterous caveat.
Also, Bernie Sanders has been touting a Medicare-for-all system for a very long time now. And so I find it fascinating that the update to this story is this study that was funded by the Koch brothers. And the framing of this whole fact-checking video is all about fact-checking Bernie Sanders rather than fact-checking the study.
Exactly. So that leads us to inaccuracy with this fact check number 2. One was America, the American people or the government. The second is just saying, hey, I went and asked the author and the author insists that Bernie Sanders is wrong is not a fact check. CNN has several $1 billion at a minimum, and then all the fact-checking organizations you're working with, that's their job. You could actually check the actual facts instead of going and calling the author, oh yeah, your Koch brothers paid you to do that, and you say they didn't interfere and that Bernie Sanders is wrong. Okay, well, you say he's wrong. Okay, I'm gonna tell everybody that he's wrong, right? Do the actual fact check. Do the actual fact check, which now leads us to the most important part. So what's actually true? Even in the middle of Jake Tapper's story, he concedes that if you pay the Medicare rates, which is by definition what you would do in Medicare-for-all, that the study, and even the author concede that yes, it would save the American people $2 trillion. Their only caveat, and it is preposterous. It's not preposterous in the real world of, hey, how is it going to be applied? It's preposterous in the caveat, in the context of this fact check. Their only thing is, well, it could cost more. Maybe Medicare will wind up paying higher rates to doctors and hospitals because they might not take it. Okay, that's an interesting conversation and debate to have. But did the study say if you apply Medicare rates in Medicare-for-all, it would save $2 trillion? Yes, the correct answer is yes. That is indisputable. So now Jake Tapper, CNN, etc. You know that's indisputable. So now it's on you. Are you going to correct it? And how thoroughly are you going to correct it? And are you going to admit that you were wrong? Or are you going to say, well, that's embarrassing. I don't want to actually admit facts because they're embarrassing to me. So I'm not going to admit it. That's on you guys.
By the way, if you are infuriated, if you're angry at Jake Tapper's video, the next portion of his fact check video will probably frustrate you even more. I'm gonna skip ahead, guys, to video 10, because this was, in my opinion, the most insulting part of all of it. Take a look.
Now, we're not here to make a judgment on the viability of Medicare for all, and we have no idea if the Koch brothers influenced the writing of this Mercatus Center study. But it does seem pretty clear that the presentation being made by Senator Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about this study lacks a lot of context, and the author of the study says they are not being accurate. A reminder to all you politicians out there, you're perfectly entitled to your own opinions, not to your own facts.
I can't. I mean, that was ridiculous. So look, I commend Bernie Sanders for actually responding to this, and he did it in a multi-tweet series. But I want to get to the heart of it. So I'll give you some of these tweets. So he said the following: I thank Jake Tapper for, let's go to graphic 44. I thank Jake Tapper for admitting his fact check on Medicare for all was not factual and editing his video. So later, Jake Tapper actually apologized because there was enough criticism and enough backlash that Jake Tapper finally realized, okay, we got it wrong, and so he made that correction. Let me give you more of that tweet though. Sadly, Tapper's video on Medicare for all, along with other fact checks, is riddled with errors peddled by Koch-funded Mercatus Center. Let's go through them. Okay, great. So Tapper says the study's author says that $2 trillion drop is not actually his conclusion. He says that's based on assumptions by Senator Sanders. Wrong. Provider payment rates in our plan are not assumptions, they are written into the bill. So my question is, did Tapper and his producers actually look at the bill? The wording of the bill, how we would pay for the bill, how the bill would work. I mean, that would be an incredibly important part of the fact-checking process, because then you would fact-check the study and realize that there are misconceptions based on what the study put out there. And even so, the study finds that Americans would save $2 trillion in healthcare.
Look, Bernie Sanders is more gracious than I am because he's accepting the apology or whatever. I think that it needs to be far more thorough than that, and you could disagree with that, and that's fine. But that condescending thing at the end about you're entitled to your own opinions, but not your facts, when you didn't bother checking the facts, is unbearable. Are you going to tell me now that Jake Tapper and his producers read the bill? They didn't even know that, hey, you're applying the Medicare rates. So, look, mistakes happen. I'm not trying to say that that's it. You should never trust Jake Tapper or CNN again, etc. But what I think we're being reasonable. What I think that the mainstream media oftentimes lacks is the context of their own bias, that things that are funded are considered legitimate, things that are what they consider centrist politicians, which I think are massively right-wing politicians, and polling indicates are out of touch with the American people. They consider centrist, and they favor greatly. If Claire McCaskill, now that's a Democrat, if Claire McCaskill says something, Jake Tapper and CNN takes it way more seriously. If Bernie Sanders says something, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says, oh, let's go, let's have fun here, okay? How many of those anchors voted for Bernie Sanders? Almost none of them. And by the way, how many of them voted for Trump? Probably almost none of them. Almost all the anchors on television, I'm guessing, this is not a fact check, okay? I'm guessing voted for Hillary Clinton. But they never thought in their, hey, isn't that a weird coincidence that we all agree that the so-called centrist Democrats and Republicans, like Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton, are awesome, and somehow the left wing and the right wing are terrible. That's funny. I wonder if somebody hired us because they knew we thought that. Oh, that's interesting. And I know that you're going to find that outrageous because that gets to the core of why you were hired in the first place. But do you see them hiring a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters as anchors on cable television? I don't see that. You think that that's an accident?
Well,
it's just a coincidence.
More importantly, I mean, forget about anchors, right? They're still playing this ridiculous game where they're all pretending to be objective. What's more important to me is what kind of guests do they have on their panel debates? Because they have absolutely no problem hiring nonsensical maniacs like Scotty Nell Hughes in the past, who was a huge Trump surrogate, huge Trump supporter. But what was the left-wing version of that? Was there a progressive there? There wasn't a single progressive there. Not a single progressive. And it continued. It's a pattern that you continue to see in cable news.
One last thing, okay, on cable news. If you guys care, and it's obvious, generally speaking, that you don't care what progressives think, and I know that comes like a big surprise to you because the right wing has been yelling at you and calling you liberal media for 40 years, so you internalized it. You're not remotely progressive or liberal, okay? You are part of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and so when you say, well, yeah, but I have to have Trump people on because Trump won and they're apparently half the country. Well, the other half of the country are progressives. And someone who supports Hillary Clinton and Joe Manchin is not necessarily a progressive. You didn't check your box. Well, everybody I know is a Hillary Clinton supporter. No, but most of the country didn't like her. That's why they didn't vote for her, okay? So when you say, hey, I every once in a while have Nina Turner on, that actually proves our point. You could point to one person that comes on some of the time as the one progressive you have on. If you want to count Van Jones, we're up to 2, okay? And everyone else is either a Trump or a Hillary Clinton supporter. Does that sound balanced to you? First of all, you don't care about that balance because you just dismiss progressives as not relevant, and you don't even know it. I don't think any of this is done out of malice. Some people might disagree, but I really don't think it is. It's just your assumptions. The assumption is the establishment is right and the right wing is to be respected and progressives are to be dismissed. And this was a perfect example of that. And as usual, based on no actual facts.
We got to take a break. When we come back, one of the most outspoken women in the Me Too movement has been accused of settling out of court with someone who had accused her of sexual assault.
That's a hugely controversial story.
Yeah.
All right, anyway, come back and we'll tell you what our thoughts on it are.